here we are in the business process flow designer. You can see how we can add stages, conditions, and we have data steps, workflows, actions, and there's also an option to call flows, which is Power Automate from here. But that's still in preview. The first thing that we're gonna do is select the default item that was added on the canvas, and then once you select it, we can click here on details. Then let's select the data step, and here we are going to name this step to request date. Then in the data field, let's select the requested date. Okay, and now we click on apply. Then we're gonna add another data step. So let's go here to the plus icon, and here we're gonna click on data step. This is gonna add some plus icons right in the first stage that we are working on. So I'm gonna click on new. Now we're gonna work on the approval status, and the data field related to this is the approval status from here. So make sure that the sequence is number 2, because first we want to work with the date, and then we're going to work with this approval status. Let's do apply again, and we're going to add another data step here below, and that's going to be price. And here we're going to do the same. Let's select the price field. So let's apply the changes, and now we are going to go to the components tab. And then we have this first stage. Now we want to add a second one, which are the 4 stages that we discussed previously. So I'm just gonna get my stage and drop it over here. That's gonna automatically link stage 1 and 2 right here. And now we know they are sequential. So I'm gonna click here on details. I'm gonna rename this to place order, and entity is properly identified as a device order. Now let's click again on the details, and then data step 1. I'm gonna rename this to estimated ship date. This is gonna be linked to estimated ship date, which is here. Then I'm gonna do apply. Then let's go to, you remember how we went to here and clicked on add. We can also take from the components, we can drag and drop them here. So those are the 2 ways you can add new data steps into a business process flow. This one is gonna be the supplier order ID. And let me remove this. Then let's select the supplier order ID here from the table as well. And we are going to set it up as required. That is really important because we really need the supplier order ID from the provider for the process to continue. Okay. Now let's click apply. Then we are going back to the components. Let's select another stage. We're gonna add it here. We're gonna name this stage as receive device. Okay. Then let's click apply. Again, we go to details. We open data step 1. We're gonna select and rename to device configured. This is gonna be linked to the device configured table, and then go back to components, and let's add a data step. Okay, Sorry, I just realized that I added the device configured first, and I'm gonna just move this to the first one, and this, because the device configured is the step number 2. For step number 1 needs to be date received. So I'm sorry for that. Let me go ahead and redo it. So here it is, date received. Okay, we're good to go. Now let's do apply. And the next one is going back to components. We go back to stage. We're gonna name this last stage as distribute device. And then we're gonna add 2 data steps. The first one is gonna be device delivered. And this is gonna be linked to device delivered. And go back to components, data step here. We're gonna put this to send survey. Finally, let's select this, send survey, and then do OK. Now we have our 4 stages properly set right here. Remember that this is the process that the organization currently has. The first one is when the device is requested. Then when we place the order with the supplier, this is when we get the order ID. Then we have the next stage, which is when we received the device, and finally it is when it is delivered to the employee. Now I forgot to rename my last stage in the business process flow. I'm gonna rename it to device the distribute device. Okay, gonna apply, and then we are going to start adding conditions. So we identify some logic into our business process flow. So I'm gonna go back to components. I'm gonna take the condition and grab it right here in between steps 1 and 2 of our business process flow. You can see how it automatically links this to the main branch of our business process flow. And what we're gonna do here is check the price. So we're gonna click on check price, and then we're gonna apply a rule. If the price is greater than $1,000, so we're gonna change the operator to is greater than value, and we're gonna do 1,000. Then we should go to branch on this area, and then what we're gonna do is, let's save. Once we save it, you're gonna realize that it has added a new stage into our business process flow. You can see that now our received device was moved up to here. So this new stage, we need to set it up, and we need to define what needs to happen if the device, we set up this condition. If the value is greater than $1,000, then what should happen into our business process flow if this is true. So if this is true, this is gonna execute. If this is not true, it's gonna go directly to the next stage, in which we request from the provider the device, right? So here we need to go to a capital approval process, and this is actually how we are gonna name this stage. So I'm gonna select it, rename it to capital approval. Then let's click on apply. I'm gonna open details, go to step number 1. Let's capital approved, and then capital approved, and then apply. Then we need to save, and then we need to activate this business process flow. I'm gonna click on activate. So we have an error here. Let's see what's going on. I'm gonna click on validate. And the error is here at the end. I forgot to properly select what was the field related to my step number 1. I'm gonna go back to the distribute device stage, and here we are going to we have here the send survey, and we also have the device delivered. So that's the one that I missed. So device delivered, and I'm gonna select here device delivered as well. So let's do apply, and yeah, those are the things about coding or doing this type of things live. There's always something that goes wrong, and the good thing is that the Power Platform give us good clues about what's going on. If we have any errors, it directly tells us where that is, and in general it gives us really good information about the errors. And that was my phone ringing. Nobody calls in 2022, but for some reason that happened today. Sorry for that. And it's just waiting for it to save and activate, and let's give it a minute for it to finish. Okay, it's now ready. Let's confirm the activation. Again, wait a couple of minutes until this is ready. Okay, so the business process flow is now active. You see how this option just changed from activate to deactivate, so we're good on that. If I go back to the Power Automate window and I refresh, this should become active now. Yep, so here it is. It's active. We can play it from here, we can edit it, or we can turn it off as well from these options. And now we need to go to this solutions section. We can go there from both Power Automate and for Power Apps. If I go here, I can also see this option that says solutions. Once we reach this place, we need to click on publish all customizations. You can see that the only thing that changes here is the color of the bar. But other than that, we see the same options, and for some reason for me, Power Automate screen is loading faster than Power Apps, so I'm gonna do the publish all customizations from here. We also need to give this process a minute or two, so let's wait until it all finishes, and it will let us know once it's done. Okay, so now you remember that when we were looking at the app, we tried to open a record and we only saw a couple of fields. We tried to create a new one and we only saw a couple of fields. When we were looking at the list in the app, we also had only 2 columns. So we need to modify the views and the forms that we have for that table so they can be visible in the app. Because remember that whatever changes we do to the tables, to the data model, to how the data is designed, those changes are going to be reflected in the model-driven app, and that is why the model-driven apps have that name. So make sure that you're in the right environment, of course, that's the first thing. Then let's search for the device order table. I'm going to open it, and remember that here we have different options. We have gone through a lot of them. We're going to focus on this one in views and forms, which I think that among everything, columns, relationships, views, forms, and data are the ones that are most used in the day-to-day life of somebody that uses the Power Platform, but there can also be other cases where somebody uses all the other tabs as well. So first, let's go to forms. By default, some forms are created for us, when we are working in the model-driven apps, by default, this main form is the one that gets used for that app. So what we're gonna do is to click on the three dots, click on Edit Form, and then Edit Form in New tab. Let's also click here. Not sure why the new tab didn't work, but I'm gonna open it from here, no problem. Okay, so here's the form, should be loading shortly, and then we are getting here some prompts that letting us know about the changes, and here is where we can start adding some fields. You remember when we opened this at the beginning, we had only these two fields. So what we need to do, you see how this general, when I click on it, it's highlighting this area. So what we need to do is to add fields in here so we can make it visible for end users. This is the canvas of what we are working with. You can see we have here general, the header, and this in the middle is the business process flow that we defined, and then in the footer we have that as well. So this is the tree view, similarly to what we saw in the Canvas app that we reviewed a couple of labs ago. And this ABC is the one that has all the table columns. So in this case, what we're gonna do first is go with the approver. We wanna add them here in the device name. So we can do it in different ways. I generally just drag and drop. For example, here I added by mistake. So I generally just drag and drop between what we have here in the table and there, but we can also use this cut and paste between those two, or we can just click them. When we click them and we have something highlighted, there is when it's gonna be added. I just prefer to drag and drop. I feel like that's the best option, but definitely that one depends on however you wanna work with it. I added these two other fields, so I'm gonna remove them. Okay. Just click here on delete. Okay, so for this one we only need the approver. So now let's click on save. And then publish. Okay, once it is published, I'm gonna go back to my Power Apps page, and now it's time to start modifying the view so we can see more columns there. And if I go to views, you remember that when we were looking at the app a couple minutes ago, we only had two views, active device order and inactive device orders. So what we want to do is to edit the active device orders. So we can directly click on them. We can click here, and I'm gonna click directly on it, and it's gonna take me to a similar designer experience to the one that we just reviewed with the forms. You can see how we have left pane, right pane, save and publish buttons and all of that, and we have all the columns here in the left. What we want to add on this one, we can add plus view column, and then we can add it from here, or we can just use this left pane and just drag and drop. I always prefer to drag and drop, but that's definitely a personal decision. You can just do this and it's gonna work, or you can just do here approval status. And then the next one that we need to add, and it is estimated ship date, and it's actually not drag and drop. You just click on them and they show up in the right. Then we're gonna add price and status. So let's add price and status. And this is how your view should look. Then let's click save and publish. Then publish. Now it's ready. Let's go back to Power Apps, and it's time to test everything that we have done so far. So let's go back to apps. We have the device ordering app that I actually named incorrectly, so I'm gonna change that shortly. And then I'm gonna open my device procurement app. You can see now how I have here everything that I added in the view. You can see I have here approval status, estimated ship date, price, and status, everything that we added. If you would have added more columns or added a filter, it will be reflected right here. Then if I open one of these, now I see all the information I need to see about this record. Now I see who is the approver of this record. Now what we want to do is to go to the device ordering app and test the end-to-end process of what we have so far. So let's go back to it and open it. So here it is. Remember that we have rules for both if the price is over 1,000 or if not. So I'm gonna select one for each of those rules so we can see both of them working. So I'm gonna go to compare to items, and most likely I forgot to publish, so let me go back to edit. You saw how here in the right I'm not seeing the form that we added in the last Dataverse lab, so that's what I think I didn't publish. So what I do in this case is open the app in edit mode, save, and then republish the app. If you don't see the most recent changes, most likely that's the reason. Or if not, just open the window in incognito, and that's also gonna load the latest changes just in case something happens. So I'm gonna do it from here. I'm gonna compare the two items, test 1, and then I'm gonna submit a test 2. So let's do it again. In this case, I'm gonna submit this one. Submit. Okay, so now let me go back to here. I'm gonna refresh this page. This is my model-driven app, and here I see the new items that I just added. Here you can see those are the ones that are created on this date. If I open the one less than 1,000, you can see here how the business process flow automatically shows here at the top, and it shows the 4 stages that it needs to go through. If I click here, it's gonna tell me, it's gonna ask me what's the approval status. I'm gonna click on next stage. It gives me exactly the steps that I need to follow, and then I'm gonna click on the estimated ship date, and yeah, I can set it up for this. And the supplier order ID, of course we don't have that yet because we're testing, and then I click next stage. So the business process flows are pretty great if you want to know, if you want to give the users the specific steps that they need to follow. So you can see how it gives me exactly the fields that I need to fill out and everything, and it gives me the directions. So it really gives me a guide through of what I need to do to complete this process. And that's the great thing about business process flow, because you can link them to a table and let the users exactly what they need to do. So if I go back again to my other screen and then I open this, you can see now how I have the capital approval stage. If I click here, it's gonna ask me, it's okay. Then instead of moving to the place order area, I get moved to the capital approved, because here is where the condition got executed and we are checking if this exists or not. If the price threshold that we established exists or not. And in this case, we realize that the price for this device is over the 1,000 USD. So that in that case, we need to go to this capital approval stage, in which we need to establish that, yep, it was approved. Now it gives me the option to go to the next stage, and this way we can go to all of the areas of the business process flow. So this is working pretty great. The business process flows are combined with the model-driven apps in a perfect way, because they are super linked, because both of them relate to Dataverse data, Dataverse rules, Dataverse tables. So if you're gonna work with Dataverse, definitely it's always a good idea to go with model-driven apps to process like the ones that we have showed in this lab, and of course going with the business process flows is also a great idea if you want to give your users the exact stages that they need to go through to complete a process or to complete a record. And this finishes this third lab about model-driven apps. Now we understand what they are for. We have been setting up tables and columns that we are using in a model-driven app. We understood what is a business process flow and how they fit in the model-driven apps. And finally, we did some setups to the forms and views to show that and reflect it in the model-driven app. So I hope that you learned a lot in this third lab. One more lab to go, and see you then.